All right, so welcome to the Edgar Allan Poe Cottage. This is the final house that Poe lived in, and he lived in here from 1846 to his death in 49. He ultimately moved here right off the hot success of The Raven, looking for some clean country air to help heal his wife who was suffering from tuberculosis. What we know now is tuberculosis, but then they sort of euphemistically called consumption. So the room we're in right now is the parlor. As you can see, it's very bucolic. Back at that point at the top of this hill here, you could see all the way to Queens across the water, which is pretty, I think, absurd to think today.
Yeah.
Another thing we have here is this bust, which is constructed for the 100th anniversary of Poe's birth. It was originally actually placed outside, but brought in. So this whole Poe Park here actually predates this cottage opening up as a museum. This was all put together in 1903. And it was sort of moved in here, and it's a big festival. Some of the other furniture here that's of note is this desk, which is not his desk, didn't belong to him, but it's the style of desk he would have used, because this is a foldable travel desk. If you can kind of see, actually, if you look at it, this is one piece of furniture on top of a table. So you can fold up the tabletop and take the whole desk along with you, so you have all your papers as you travel. And this would have been really necessary for Poe. He was the first, well, one of, if not the first writer to make a living solely on writing. Most writers at the time were either sort of diplomats or they were independently wealthy, and he was neither. He was famous in his time, but he was actually quite poor through most of his life. This was considered a home of the working poor at the time. This was a tenant farmer's house. Paid $100 a year in rent, which even for the time was a pretty modest sum. But that was necessary for a writer in his time. He got paid about $15 to publish The Raven, which doesn't cover his year's rent.
No.
And at the time, that was a pretty famous work. He, somewhat equivalent to like a Billboard top 10 for his day. So
yeah, I saw his actual portable writing desk, and it's in the Ford Museum in Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
Interesting. Yeah. I think so. Here there were a number of tenants who lived after Poe, so most of the furniture didn't belong to him. There's a couple of things in the next room that I'll talk about that may have dated back to the time while they lived here, but we don't have any official documentation. But we like to say that it may have actually. It certainly predates the museum. We also have this bookshelf here, which is filled not necessarily of his works, but of works that would have inspired him and that he inspired. There's a copy of some Arthur Conan Doyle works there. Of course, was credited by Arthur Conan Doyle with basically inventing the detective story with Murders in the Rue Morgue. He says without Poe there would be no Sherlock Holmes. One final thing in this room before we move on is this photograph right here, which is an exhibition put on in 1959 by the Brooklyn Museum, which is a staging of Poe's treatise on an ideal room, which is something he writes while living here. He actually seems to really enjoy this cottage while he lives here. He also writes Landor's Cottage, which at the time, which is believed to be sort of romanticization of this cottage itself. Landor, I don't know if you saw that movie that just came out based on the book.
Yeah.
But Augustus Landor, Augustus being the main character in Murders in the Rue Morgue, and Landor coming from Landor's Cottage.
Yeah,
so,
I saw that.
Yeah.
That was a really good movie.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Just one last thing before we move on is, while he was living here, he sort of made friends with the Jesuits who had just taken over St. John's College, which is now called Fordham University, just down the road there.
Okay.
And he used to say that they were perfect gentlemen. They smoked, they drank, they gambled, and they never talked about religion.
Nice.
So, sounds like the Jesuits I know.
That's awesome.
So this would have been actually originally his aunt's bedroom.
Oh.
But when
Tiny.
when his wife was sick, they brought her down here, and this is sort of became her sick bed and ultimately her deathbed when she died in 1848.
Oh.
And so actually this bed is the one, and the bed and the mirror are the things that we believe may date back to Poe's time here. But like I said, we can't definitively prove that. There's not too much else to see in the room, aside from the sort of ennui of the important death.
Yeah, that's sad.
But some things you might find of interest over here. So this is an illustration of Poe walking across the High Bridge. Poe sort of styles himself a nature guy. He liked to take long walks through the Bronx. And at the time, they just finished constructing the High Bridge, which was originally built as part of the Old Croton Aqueduct system, this huge triumph of civil engineering at the time, who brought fresh water.
Where is the High Bridge around here? Is it close?
The High Bridge is all the way south across the Harlem River.
Okay.
Well, it goes across the Harlem River.
Oh, all right.
So I forget. I can't remember what street it is that you have to walk down. It's not 3rd Avenue. It's not one of those. But in any event, but yeah, it's you can walk it. But it's a nice walk.
All right.
Yeah, but it's if you want to enjoy it. Where are you guys coming from, by the way? I forgot to ask. Ohio. Where?
Yeah.
Ohio?
Akron.
Akron.
Yeah,
Nice.
we're heading back tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So you got a busy day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So some of the other things on this wall. This is a newspaper article / advertisement trying to raise money for the stylus that Poe wrote. The stylus, Poe aficionados may be familiar with, but it's this journal that he's trying to start through his whole career, more or less, because he hates writing for other editors. He detests everyone else's taste except his own, and maybe Charles Dickens. But through his career, he becomes known for these being a savage critic. He famously accuses Longfellow of plagiarism, spuriously, and since Longfellow won't respond to him, he has to invent a character in order to defend Longfellow against Poe, so he can drum up this whole controversy. But Poe, being a sort of egomaniac, can't help but compliment himself while writing against him. It kind of becomes very obvious very quickly who this nobody character really is. Anyway, the last thing left on this wall is probably the most famous photo of Poe. This is probably the image that most people have in their head when they think Edgar Allan Poe. This was taken just actually a few months before his death. It's while he was living here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is sort of we see two things here. We see one, he's dressed very fashionably for the time. He's not a rich man, but he likes to sort of pretend he is. Mariah Clem is known for keeping it very tidy in the house. She sort of likes to present a very clean, ideal house that's like sort of fit for the Southern aristocracy he styled himself as belonging to. Of course, despite being born in Boston, floating through different northeastern cities most of his career. But he, of course, was found in someone else's clothes that didn't fit him. So this contributes to the mystique of his death, which we'll talk more about when we get upstairs. But the other thing is that this is actually not sort of the look he was known for during his lifetime. During his life, he was more known for his prodigious sideburns, which are gone by the time he takes this photo. Do you have any questions so far? No? Well then, I'm happy to bring you guys upstairs. Just be very careful. These Victorian stairs to reduce their footprint, so there's more space in the house itself, but then also to improve heating and to keep each separation between the rooms more efficient. Okay, so the first room we'll look at in here, this is the writer's garret. This is where he would have done most of his writing while living here. He writes a lot of his actually most famous works while living here. Of course, it's right off the hot success of The Raven, which he wrote while living on a farm on the Upper West Side. So just while moving here, he writes Annabel Lee, of course inspired by his wife's own death. The Bells, inspired by the bells at the church at St. John's College. He writes The Cask of Amontillado here, Eureka, and a number of others that I think are escaping me at the moment, but those are probably the most famous ones. So you can take a look. Also here we have the evolution of images of Poe. You can see those sideburns I was talking about.
Yeah.
The look we have of him is mostly from 1848 and later. So this exhibit that we have, you might have seen these banners, it's been loaned to us from Poe Baltimore, which if you're a Poe fan, you should check out someday.
I've been there, yeah,
Yes.
a couple times, yeah.
I should have known.
Yeah.
But this is exhibiting on Poe's death. And so to talk about Poe's death, we don't have any clear idea of how he died. It's for a number of reasons. Probably, I think, most importantly, the attending physician uses his story to make himself wealthy. He goes on tours of the country. His story changes between cities, and it's hard to tell what sort of evidence of his death is real or what's fabricated. I mentioned before that he was found in someone else's clothes, but how do we really know that? But the theory that's based on that has to do with him being a victim of cooping, which was a type of voter fraud at the time, where at the time ballots were usually placed either in or next to bars, right? So you'd go into the bar, the pub, wherever. You'd get a couple of drinks. You'd have him vote for your candidate. You'd take him around the corner, rough him up a little bit, put him in someone else's clothes, maybe give him a shave or a haircut, and send him right back on the line to vote. So, it's thought that maybe they went a little bit too far in the wrapping up section of that whole scam. But of course, that's just one of many theories. I think all of them ultimately bottom out to the fact that he was an alcoholic. He was already suffering from, either withdrawal or just symptoms of a severe alcoholism, which at the time was also, like his wife's disease, just cynical consumption. So it's sort of a catch-all term for things they didn't know. They just were consumption. So he's originally buried in an unmarked grave. It actually takes a number of decades for him to be reburied in this memorial in Baltimore that we have a photograph of right there. He's originally buried alone, but now he's joined by his immediate family. The story of his wife's bones I find most amusing, because she was originally buried in the Valentine crypt while she was living here. So the Valentine family was the family that owned the farm here. But around the same time that the cottage is going to be demolished, they're looking at demolishing the Valentine crypt to make way for development. And so an enterprising young gentleman decides that he's going to rescue her bones from being crushed to dust, and takes them, keeps them under his bed for about a year, until eventually deciding that what's best to do is to bring them down to Baltimore to be laid to rest with Poe himself. This is the last room out here. This is a pretty good-sized main bedroom. This is where Poe would have slept at the time. Of course, original television. But we don't have too much up here. But we just like to talk about the sort of lasting legacy of Poe. Of course, he's mostly known for his macabre works, his proto-horror. But of course, he's equally influential in the detective story. He's like I said, downstairs. credited with single-handedly invented the detective story, and also somewhat influential in early science fiction with Eureka. Eureka, by the way, actually, he thought was his best work. I think he's about the only person who thinks that. But you know, he really rated himself on that one. You might want to take a look at this little frame here, this portrait. The portrait's not so interesting, but what's interesting is this painted frame here, which shows just sort of episodes from his life, different stories he's written: the Bells, the Black Cat, the Raven, Virginia, Mariah Clem, and so on. One of these is supposed to represent the pit and the pendulum, but I guess it's this one.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go. You know, just noticing this now, finally making sense to me. I'm like, Poe's story is a stingray.
Nice.
So, any questions up here?